Hello and welcome back, and before we start today's video, let me tell you a quick story. Now, I've not always been here. The first job I ever had was at a health food manufacturing plant called Plasto Foods. What they did is they got little bits of dried food and they put them in little mixed bags and sold them to the likes of Holland and Barrett. It was not a good job. It was a fun job. It was nice to have a little bit of cash in the back pocket, but it was not a good job. Now, fast forward to now, I get to sit at this table and talk about what is, in my opinion, one of the most cutting edge things I've ever talked about here on the channel, this device here. And it makes me wonder whether that little man that was there on the production line sorting dried apples from dried apricots knew just how exciting things would be. So when you watch this video, yes, this is a hardware review of the OCW accelerator card, but at the same OWC accelerator card, what I will also say is this is a sheer testament to just how good things can be. So if you are watching this and you're doing a horrible job that you don't like, it may not be the end of the road. Trust me, good things can happen. And the fact I get to play with a card like this is very much on my to-do list. Yes, that rather childish, idyllic introduction aside there, this is the OWC Accelsior 8M2 card. I first talked about this on one of the Data News of the Week videos a few months ago, and I'm genuinely glad I was able to, I'm not going to use words like beg, but I'm going to say productively ask repeatedly to have it reviewed here on the channel. I've only got it for a short-term review, and we will be doing full performance testing in a follow-up video. This is a hardware review because this card at its lowest price at $799 is not coming cheap. What exactly are you getting for nigh on $800? And by the way, when I say $800, this device comes on a series of different population levels and reaches as high as $12,999. That's a lot of money. What exactly is this? In short, this is a storage accelerator card. It takes advantage of modern SSDs. We talked about it before, PCIe, Gen4 × 4 SSDs, and it takes that performance that they provide and then bulks groups of them together to provide enormous performance storage to the end user. Obviously, working professionals, if a gamer is using this, what is wrong with you? This is so OG, this is not OG, this is so OP, it's ridiculous. If you are an 8K editor, this is the sort of thing you should be looking at. This is the 2TB model, and we will be taking it down to give you a look at the SSDs inside. And in our software performance testing, we're not only going to be looking at the 2TB model of this that's got 8 drives that culminate in 2TB, but we'll also be looking at bulk drives from other SSD brands as well. At the moment, I'm in discussion with Sir Brent about hopefully getting a loan on a big pile of SSDs. Fingers crossed on that one, but otherwise there will be performance testing on large-scale SSDs with different brands to give you some idea of the spec of that. But in an ideal high-performance system, this card apparently can reach speeds of 926 megabytes per second sequential read, which is phenomenal. Now, obviously, you need the right hardware spec to reach that level, and in my software review, I very much doubt I will hit that high. That was tested on an 8-core Ryzen with elite level SSDs inside at high capacity, and of course, I'm not going to have that hardware to my disposal. I'm using an 11th gen i5, and I'm going to be using 16 gig of memory, but it will be via PCIe. In order to get that performance on a card like this, you're going to need PCIe Gen4 × 16 a slot available on your system, which luckily I do. So if you're considering this for your new gen Mac, or you're considering this for your high performance window editing machine, do remember that although it does support backwards compatibility, which is always a good thing, a PCIe Gen 3 × 16, to get the full most out of this card, you're going to need PCIe Gen 4. It's a very future-proof card. There's no card like it in the world, at least at the time of its release. I know there's probably going to be follow-ups and contemporaries throughout the year, but if we have a look inside, I have already opened this, by the way, so the bag has already been opened inside. It arrives nice and flush inside there, big old bit of foam there, and there's also information regarding the hardware specifications and recommended setup of this inside there. And again, there's a full review in the description below. from NAS Compares. And again, lots of information there about the internal hardware. And then, of course, information on soft RAID, something we'll talk about later on in the video, which I think is an often overlooked element of this device. That not just this device, I would say, a lot of OWC solutions that often get overlooked. In a way, I've talked about OWC for a long time, insofar as they took Accelsior. Accelsior, that was a hardware brand that I talked about on the channel a lot. They're always a big name at CES every year with some real cutting edge Thunderbolt solutions, and OWC kind of swallowed them up, I understand, and then OWC started being one of the big storage names and big performance storage names at CES, something I'm hoping to see more this year as well. Big bit of fun. Let's get rid of that. And then we've got the big old card itself. Now, this, as mentioned, is the 2TB model. There are several capacities available, with the largest one being 64 terabytes of PCIe Gen 4 storage, and it's with that top tier that you can hit with the optimal system that 26,000 megabytes per second sequential read there. Now, again, I have already unbagged this, so it was bagged up a lot tighter than what you're seeing here. But let's get this card out of here, get rid of that bag, probably move this big old bit of foam here. And there is our giant PCIe storage upgrade card. It is huge. Now remember, there are 8 PCIe Gen 4 x 4 M2 slots inside there. They didn't scrimp. They could have knocked them down to Gen 4 x 2 or whatever, but they didn't. They are full performance bandwidth there. There's even additional power there for that fan on the supported board if you've got the PSU to support that. Again, it's got a silent fan there on the top, so again, they of course needed to put an enormous amount of cooling. Look at the heat dissipation on that card panel there, an enormous amount of heat dissipation. But again, they've included that fan to make sure air keeps moving all the way through this card. They even had to ventilate the back panel there so it can make sure to take advantage of the full the full horizontal airflow throughout this card there. And again, when I talk about 8K editors there, we're talking about some weighty footage where editing means, because you're dealing with multiple layers and a lot of the footage you're dealing with stacks, because you're not, when you're editing 4K, you're not just dealing with one file, you're dealing with effects. Maybe you're introducing and sliding in transitions. Whichever way you look at it, it gets weightier and weightier. And if you're a 4K editor, we're already at breaking point with a lot of the storage medias, hence why PCIe Gen 4 x 4 became so popular so quickly, because storage media, as fast as it's become, resolution and picture quality has far outpaced it. And that's why cards like this that multiply that storage ability have been introduced into the market. Now, one thing I will say about this card, as much as I like this, there is one thing about it I'm less keen on, and it's the fact that to get into this, you need to use a very particular screwdriver. It doesn't use traditional crosshead screwdrivers. You have to use I think octagonal screwdrivers built in. Now, they don't include that screwdriver, which is a bit of a bummer. Luckily, I have sufficient screws here available. Again, that's like a 10 quid screwdriver quick kit. I do recommend you check that out. So I will be taking the heatsink off in a moment. But why they didn't include a screwdriver with it really surprises me, given you're obviously going to need to take that heatsink off there. It's a very small criticism, because it's, you know, it's a great card if it can do what they say it can do. And that heat dissipation and the build quality, and it being the only one in the world, $799 unpopulated is actually better than I thought it would be when you really look at how much these SSD upgrade cards currently in the market for Gen 3 cost. This is the same price as its Gen 3 alternatives at this scale. And there are cards from companies like Atto and OWC themselves in the Accelsior series have been releasing a number of different accelerator cards. They've got 1 and 2 bay and 4 bays already out there. This 8 bay is the latest line. This isn't new for them. They've done a lot more for this. They've got a whole regimented pattern. Cards that have SSDs pre-built have burn-in tests before they're shipped out. If we have a look at the base of this system, we can see individual storage monitor components down the back. It's got the PCIe switch inside. It's got its own dedicated controller on board that works with soft RAID. But for now, let's get this lid off of here and have a good look at the SSDs underneath that heatsink. Okay, so we've removed all 7 screws. There were 6 underneath and 1 there at the top. And if we remove here, we can have a look at that absolutely enormous heatsink panel there. Now, we've already looked at the top, all of the grazing there, all the way through in the active fan. But it's when we look at the rear that things get even more interesting. Look at that sheer scale of thermal padding there. And again, these are adhesive thermal pads, so again, they will stick above the SSDs inside. There's also a dedicated thermal pad there for that onboard controller. So if we bring that there nice and close to camera without the light ruining it for us there, we've got an enormous copper panel here to further assist the dissipation, and that is, you know, by no accident, directly underneath that of the active cooling fan all the way through there. So again, huge amount of heat dissipation being made available there. And remember, this is not a thin heat sink there. To put that into perspective, that is how thick an SSD is. There is our heatsink there. So an enormous thickness there to that dissipation there. And if we have a look at the board itself, we can have a look at what we've got on offer. And again, this is the 2TB model that we're talking about here. We have got 8 drives inside there, each one of 240 gig. So again, that goes up to the 2 TB, so 1 TB and the second TB there. And again, that is a RAID 0 configuration. The device does support multiple RAID configurations as well. These are taking advantage of Phison F12 or E12 SSDs there. These are Aurora P12 Pro SSDs. And again, you don't have to use their SSDs. It's worth highlighting they didn't go down the exclusive route that we've seen some brands go for. So this device arrives with, if you go for one of their pre-populated options, and again, there are 7 different capacities that start at 2 TB and then get higher and higher. And those different capacities that they offer there, if you go for their option, the system then comes with a 5-year warranty. Although it is worth highlighting that using their specifications pages there, you should get, if you go for the unpopulated model, a 3-year warranty. On their page, they seem to have 2 different options there, or 3 or 1 TB, whether that's a limited warranty or manufacturer's warranty, but still, you get a longer warranty if you go for the device without their SSDs inside, but they don't stop you using your own SSDs, which is really important. Because there are different kinds of buyers out there, and some users will want to go for this but not fully populate on day one. They might want to go for partial population, sticking in 4 SSDs, maybe in a RAID 0 or RAID 10 environment, and then adding groups of SSDs over time, something we will be looking at in the software testing. Also, it's worth highlighting that Broadcom controller there inside. That is, frankly, where the magic happens, because just having super fast SSDs inside this is not going to be enough. It just isn't. You need a good management. Having a good CPU is going to help when you're running, whether it's real world or synthetic benchmark testing with AJA and Atto and stuff like that, and Crystal Disk that we're going to be running in the next video. But this card needs to have its own PCIe switch and onboard controller. That it does. Now, with each of those SSDs inside, it's worth highlighting they do make it abundantly clear that you should not remove these SSDs without kind of undermining your warranty there. Or at least, you know, if you've got a warranty replacement, there's anti-wear as well. So we'll talk about the software RAID element. But all of these SSDs are being funneled and channeled via the onboard controller to that PCIe Gen 4 times 16 connection there. And again, with all of these not being inhibited, able to take advantage of their full performance, that is how this card's going to reach that high of that 26,000 in the right usage scenario there. Now, let's talk about the software. Soft RAID, of course. On board, this does include soft RAID. And again, OWC solutions generally have that as well. They have compared it, and favourably, it has to be said, to be much faster than Apple's own internal RAID. If you are a Mac OS user and you currently do use its own internal RAID system, maybe you're using an Apple system that's got multiple drives that you're RAIDing together performance, NVMe or not. Soft RAID does everything it does and more. Now, that is the support of multiple RAIDs, and that can be broken down into 2 factors. You've got your multiple RAIDs So you can have maybe two RAID 5s on there if you want a RAID 0 and a RAID 0 pairing together, in other words, a glorified RAID 10. But also, you can do mixed storage volumes for end use. And by that, what I mean is you could have two volumes on here, one Windows-centric and another Mac-centric. Now, there is the element of dual boot there, or exchanging between devices, but having one card that can support both Windows and Mac simultaneously is going to be very advantageous to mixed platform editing suites where, let's be honest, you know, a Mac, if you use it right and it's more channeled utilization of hardware resources to single tasks, is often why it's a more favorable choice for a lot of video editors out there. However, there are other things that Windows systems just do better in terms of distribution and sharing and ease of configuration. And it's nice to have a card that only gives you that high performance, but on top of that, that varied use included as well. Now, you've got onboard analytics and testing as well. And again, that's included whether you go for the populated version or not. Bear that in mind. So whether you're going to use your own SSDs, again, your Sabrent, your WDs, your Seagates, doesn't matter. You can still use all of those tools that are built in there, along with drive anti-wear monitoring tools built into SoftRAID as well. Because as good as SSDs are and as great as this high performance is going and fantastic stuff, bear in mind that the more you are bombarding these drives, although there's been great innovations in durability of SSDs, the speed of SSDs has grown substantially higher than that of the durability of SSDs over the last few years. So having anti-wear and durability and health checks of those is going to be incredibly important. Now, it is worth highlighting that there is drive validation checks built into it as well. So if you're thinking of populating this with subpar SSDs, or basically just incompatible SSDs, or mixed SSD environments that are going to be problematic to both the card and your output, it does have internal validation built in as well. So it will benchmark, it will give you an understanding of just how good or bad this is going to handle your media. And again, all of this is going to be covered in the software video. The reason I'm breaking this down into the hardware and the software coverage is quite simply because there's just too much to cover in one video without kind of skipping a lot of the important hardware stuff, such as that cross compatibility there. Now, let's bring that closer to the camera again. All of this information along with the testing is going to be covered in one giant Data Compare article linked in the description there. And again, we're not going to worry too much about the audio, but I will once again highlight that the heatsink on board there uses a silent fan, because I know a number of you who have been looking at upgrading to super fast editing storage, whether it is for editing or for theoretical stuff, or it's going to be using for AI powered services, you're quite concerned with noise. So although I'm not going to cover it in too much detail in the video, I will try to include average noise levels as well where possible, and of course temperature testing as well within this system as we go through it with different SSDs. But this has been the OWC Accelsior 8M2 card hardware review. I'm holding off full judgment until we do the software testing, because although my test rig is not going to be as powerful as the one they use, it's still going to be a great test. And I think we should hold off any full praise on this card, good or bad, until we get it in the machine. What do I like? I like the hardware build. I like the attention to detail. I love the cooling, something we've learned more about PCIe cards over time. What don't I like? I hate that they don't include the screwdriver. That's annoying. But on top of that, another thing I'm not overly keen on is the price capping at the capacities. I think the capacities are the right capacities, given that the highest capacity 64 TB in a RAID 0 is 8 times 8 TB storage. They've gone the right way, in my opinion, in terms of overall storage. The caps they've gone for, but the pricing seems a little askew, and I'd be very curious what the drives are in the 64 TB model, whether they are, because these look like 2280 drives, what are the 8 TBs that they would use inside this drive? Do they use QLC or are they 3D TLC? But if I get an update on that one, I'll let you know in the software review. But short of that, the pricing of the individual pre-populated tiers and the lack of screwdriver to some degree, this is still 9 out of 10 card for me, at least in terms of the hardware, but let's say full judgment for that software. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the software review. Click like if you've enjoyed this, subscribe, and the bell to be notified when the software and the full performance testing is live. And of course, If you're looking for the right storage solution for your home or your business needs, take advantage of the free advice section over on NAS Compares. It's linked in the description. Made by two humans, me, Eddie the Web Guy, genuinely free. We don't do anything to your email. We don't even care about your starting email. But there are donate buttons there. Use them, ignore them. It's up to you. We answer practically every email that we can. We're only human beings. It might take us a day or so to answer, but we do answer them. And we give you free impartial advice. So take advantage. But otherwise, I will see you at the performance testing.